Why are shotguns even used in warfare, and how did their role twist so wildly from what they were first meant to be? You might think you know the story, but what's coming next could seriously surprise you. It all begins way back, long before the sleek rifles and tactical gear, back when the idea of a shotgun looked more like a cannon. See, in those early days, soldiers got creative. They'd load their cannons with all kinds of improvised chaos, small lead balls, chains, even nails packed with black powder. They called it grape shot or canister shot. And when fired, it tore through enemy lines at close range like a storm of metal. Imagine standing in front of that. It was basically a monstrous, early version of a shotgun from the 17th century. Then someone decided to take that same brutal concept and shrink it down into a handheld weapon. That's when the blunderbuss was born. The first real shotgun in history. It was short, with a flared muzzle and a mean kick. You could stuff it with almost anything metal, and it would blast out a deadly spray that guaranteed you'd hit your target, or more than one, if they were unlucky enough to be close. This beast ruled close combat, especially in ship battles or during surprise ambushes where accuracy didn't matter, just destruction. But as time moved on, rifles got smarter, better barrels, better rounds, and way better range. The shotgun started fading from the battlefield, taking on a new life as a hunter's tool instead. Soldiers swapped scatter for precision. Yet that peace didn't last. When World War I erupted, the shotgun came roaring back, earning a reputation so fierce, its name would echo through the trenches forever. But why the shotgun? At a time when every army was obsessed with high-powered rifles that could drop a target from half a mile away, why reach for something meant for close-range blasts? The answer hits hard once you picture the scene of World War I, muddy trenches, claustrophobic tunnels, and enemies just a few meters apart. Suddenly, that fancy 1,000-yard rifle didn't mean much when your enemy was close enough to toss a grenade right into your face. Back then, before submachine guns became a thing, soldiers grabbed whatever they could for brutal, up-close fighting pistols, revolvers, trench knives. Even sharpened shovels and busted helmets turned into weapons. You couldn't exactly swing a 1-meter-long rifle with a bayonet inside a cramped trench without getting stuck in the mud or a wall. That's when the shotgun made its dramatic entrance, loud, fast, and devastating. It wasn't just another gun. It became the weapon of chaos in the tight, filthy hell of trench warfare. By the late 1800s, shotguns had already evolved from old-school muzzle loaders to slick repeating designs, lever actions, pump actions, and more. One masterpiece stood above them all, the Winchester Model 1897, designed by none other than John Browning himself. Originally built for civilians, it was about to become a legend in combat. When American troops landed in the Philippines, they weren't facing open-field warfare anymore. They were dropped into jungles so thick you could barely see a few feet ahead. Villages turned into ambush zones, and those long, slow bolt-action rifles suddenly felt like dead weight. Enemies rushed from just a few yards away, giving no time to reload or aim carefully. That's when the shotgun proved its worth: lightning fast to aim, quick to fire, and brutally effective at close range. In those moments, it wasn't just a weapon, it was survival itself. General John Pershing. Yeah, that Pershing wasn't one to forget a good weapon. When he led the American expeditionary forces into Europe during World War I, he remembered what the shotgun had done back in the Philippine-American War around 1900. Those brutal jungle fights had proven one thing at close range: nothing hit harder. So when trench warfare turned the Western Front into a nightmare maze of mud, barbed wire, and hand-to-hand chaos, Pershing knew exactly what could change the game. Enter the trench shotgun, or as soldiers love to call it, the trench broom, or trench sweeper. Sounds dramatic, right? Well, it earned that name fast. You've probably heard about these legends in passing, but few realize just how devastating they truly were once unleashed on the front lines. At first, these shotguns were shipped over on Pershing's request just to guard prisoners. But it didn't take long before some clever minds thought, why not take a few to the front? By late 1917, around 5,000 Winchester shotguns fitted with bayonets had made their way to the U.S. Army, with about 1,000 set aside for real combat testing. That's when the famous Model 1897 got its deadly makeover. They chopped the barrel shorter, slapped on a ventilated steel heat shield to keep the shooter from burning his hands, and attached a long M1917 bayonet at the tip, just in case the enemy got too close. It fired heavy 12-gauge shells packed with double-aught buckshot 9 thick lead pellets that could rip through enemy lines at close range like a storm. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Early shotgun shells were made of paper, and when soaked in the constant trench rain, they'd swell, tear, and jam the weapon mid-fight. Total disaster. The fix? All brass shells and later, special waxed rounds that could handle the mud and moisture. Once that problem was solved, these shotguns were ready to wreak havoc. Scouts and assault teams took them out first, and right away they saw the difference while bolt-action rifles fumbled in the mud. The trench sweeper tore through enemies like nothing else. And if you've ever heard of the M97, you'll know it had one little trick up its sleeve that made it even more terrifying. The shotgun's power wasn't just in its punch, it was in its speed. The Model 1897 could hold 1 shell in the chamber and 5 more in the tube, giving soldiers 6 brutal blasts ready to go. But here's where it got really wild: it didn't have a trigger disconnector. That meant if you held the trigger down and pumped the action, the gun would fire instantly every time a new shell was chambered. This move was called slam firing, and it turned the shotgun into a close-range machine gun powered by pure muscle. The faster you pumped, the faster it roared. Imagine this in a narrow trench, each blast throwing out 9 heavy lead pellets, ricocheting down the walls, tearing through anything in the way. Now picture several soldiers doing that at once. The Germans never stood a chance when the shotguns came storming through those muddy corridors. After just a few successful missions, commanders knew they had something lethal on their hands. More shotguns were requested immediately. The Americans had found their perfect trench-clearing weapon, a tool so effective that it sent shockwaves through the enemy ranks. And get this, the same Germans who had no problem unleashing flamethrowers and poisonous gas suddenly filed a formal protest against the shotgun. They claimed it caused unnecessary suffering. The irony was off the charts. Sure, a 12-gauge blast could shred targets at close range. Those buckshot pellets hit hard and deformed on impact, but compared to mustard gas melting lungs or phosgene choking soldiers to death? Please, the hypocrisy was staggering. The Allies called out the complaint as nonsense, and the protest was officially dismissed. But the Germans didn't stop there. They threatened that any American caught with a shotgun or even just shotgun shells would be executed on the spot. In response, the Allies made their own chilling warning: harm our men and pay the price. That settled it, at least on paper, but soldiers knew better. If capture was imminent, many would ditch their shotgun and ammo fast, just to avoid what could happen if the enemy got their hands on them alive. There were stories, dark, brutal stories, of what followed when they didn't. Still, the legend of the trench shotgun lived on. The Model 1897 soon evolved into the slick, hammerless Winchester 1912, and even though only a limited number made it into service, their impact in those blood-soaked trenches was unforgettable. When World War I finally ended, the mighty shotgun got pushed back into storage again. It was labeled secondary, while the spotlight shifted back to long-range rifles and faster-firing automatics. But that didn't mean the shotgun's war days were over, not even close. Its comeback was already brewing, waiting for the next global storm. When World War II exploded, America suddenly realized they hadn't stocked enough shotguns for the fight ahead. Factories scrambled to build more and even converted civilian models into military-grade versions. At first, they were handed mostly to guards and military police, same old story, right? But then came a battlefield that changed everything. The Pacific. Picture it: the thick, humid jungles, impossible visibility, and an enemy so fierce and relentless that every fight turned into a life-or-death struggle at arm's length. The Japanese forces fought with a level of determination, some even said fanaticism, that made close combat the norm. And in that kind of terrain, where every bush could hide an ambush, the shotgun became the ultimate weapon once again. U.S. Marines sweeping through the Pacific Islands quickly discovered that shotguns and flamethrowers were a terrifyingly effective duo. Shotguns shredded through bunkers, caves, and trenches at point-blank range, clearing out fortified positions faster than anything else. When Japanese soldiers charged in surprise attacks, the shotgun's devastating spread ended the rush before it could reach the line. Over in Europe, shotguns didn't get quite the same spotlight, but they still made an impact in urban warfare, tight alleys, ruined cities, room-to-room combat where rifles were just too slow to handle. And it didn't stop there. After World War II, the shotgun kept proving its worth through Korea and Vietnam. The Ithaca Model 37 became the go-to close combat favorite, especially in the thick jungles of Southeast Asia. Tank crews even kept them on standby for defense. In some cases, an M48 gunner would sit right on the engine deck, back to the turret, gripping a shotgun and watching for enemies sneaking up with satchel charges or RPGs. Meanwhile, the tank commander stayed ready to blast the main gun if things got too close for comfort. From muddy trenches to jungle ambushes, one thing was clear: the shotgun might have been old school, but it never stopped being deadly. And get this, tanks even fired what were basically giant shotgun shells. These monstrous rounds, called beehive shells, turned a tank's cannon into a colossal shotgun that blasted out thousands of tiny steel balls or razor-sharp flechettes at once. The result at close range was beyond brutal. One shot could shred through anything standing in its path. It was like watching controlled chaos on an industrial scale. But what nobody saw coming was how the shotgun's purpose would completely shift after those jungle wars ended. Once the fighting in Vietnam was over, the shotgun packed up its combat boots and stepped into a new role: law enforcement and special operations. Suddenly, it wasn't just a soldier's weapon. It was the cop's best friend and a SWAT team essential. The Mossberg 500 series became the new king of pump-action shotguns. Reliable, simple, and ready for anything. Then came the next evolution: the semi-automatics. The Benelli M4, sleek and deadly, rose to fame as one of the best combat shotguns ever made. Even the British military adopted it, proving its global reputation. But here's where it gets cool: the shotgun wasn't just about firepower anymore. It became the ultimate breaching tool. Troops in Afghanistan and Iraq used them to blast through locked doors in an instant, firing special rounds that shattered locks without sending deadly shrapnel bouncing back at them. Talk to any veteran who's done house clearing or breaching missions, they'll tell you the shotgun was a lifesaver when every second mattered. Some soldiers even carried under-barrel mini shotguns, mounted where grenade launchers usually sit. Imagine that your rifle jams in a close-quarters firefight, and boom, you've got a shotgun ready to go right beneath it. That quick switch could mean the difference between life and death. And it didn't stop there. The shotgun found another, more controlled side, less lethal ammo. These rounds, like rubber pellets or beanbag shells, could knock someone down hard without causing fatal damage. From jungle warfare to riot control, the shotgun had officially done it all: deadly when needed, restrained when required. Those so-called less lethal rounds might not kill, but don't get it twisted, they hurt like crazy. A beanbag blast to the chest can drop even the toughest person in seconds, knocking the fight right out of them. But while special forces have continued using shotguns for breaching, riot control, and specialized missions, nobody expected what came next. Because now, in the modern age of warfare, the shotgun is making a comeback, and in the most shocking way imaginable. If you could show a soldier from World War I or II what battles look like today, they'd be speechless. Forget bayonets and trench raids. The biggest threat on the battlefield now isn't a man with a rifle, but a drone. Cheap, fast, and deadly, these flying machines can deliver explosives right where they're needed, all controlled by someone miles away holding a joystick. Both FPV and UAV drones have completely rewritten the rules of war. And the scariest part? Nowhere is this more real than in Ukraine. Wire-guided drones there have become nearly unstoppable. They can't be jammed, and they hunt in swarms, raining chaos on everything below: tanks, vehicles, bunkers, and even lone soldiers. Both sides are using them relentlessly, and the skies have turned into the most dangerous part of the battlefield. You might wonder, why don't soldiers just shoot them down? Well, they're trying, but hitting a small, fast-moving drone with a 5.56 or 7.62 rifle round is like trying to swat a mosquito with a spear. That's where the shotgun steps back into the spotlight. In an ironic twist of history, the same weapon once feared in the trenches is now being used to fight flying robots. Shotguns loaded with buckshot or birdshot actually give soldiers a better chance of taking a drone out of the sky, spraying enough pellets to make contact even if the aim's not perfect. But it's still no easy task. Drones move fast, twist in midair, and often attack in waves. Soldiers have only seconds to spot, aim, and fire before those buzzing threats reach them. With maybe 7 shells in the tube, there's no time to reload once the swarm is overhead. It's a fight of seconds, and every trigger pull counts. The shotgun has officially stepped into the future of warfare, proving once again that old-school firepower still has a place in high-tech battles. As drone warfare keeps evolving, so do the weapons designed to fight back, and the shotgun has once again become the testing ground for some seriously wild ideas. One of the most creative inventions so far? Drone hunting shotgun shells. Yeah, you heard that right, ammo built specifically to take down drones. One clever design fires a net instead of pellets. When launched from a rifled shotgun barrel, it bursts open mid-air into a 5-foot-wide mesh with 5 weighted segments, all tethered together. The moment it hits a drone, it wraps around the rotors, instantly tangling them up and sending the target crashing from the sky. The U.S. Air Force has already tested these so-called Skynet 12-gauge rounds, and they're surprisingly effective, able to hit targets as far as 140 meters away, way beyond the reach of regular buckshot. Not to be outdone, the Russians came up with their own twist, a 12-gauge Kevlar mesh cartridge that works on the same idea, though it's only effective at shorter ranges. Still, it shows how seriously every side is taking this new kind of aerial threat. Even wilder experiments are in progress. Engineers have started creating rifle rounds shaped like shotgun shells that fire bursts of tiny metal balls instead of a single bullet. The concept is simple but brilliant. A soldier could just swap in a special magazine, load these multi-projectile rounds, and instantly turn their standard rifle into a drone defense weapon, no shotgun required. Looks like the age-old scattergun just found its next evolution, and it's all about fighting machines in the sky. Of course, most of these high-tech anti-drone rounds are still in the testing phase, not exactly standard issue yet. But regular shotguns? Those are everywhere. On the front lines in Ukraine, both sides have learned fast that every squad needs at least one shotgun on hand and usually another mounted on a vehicle, ready to blast drones out of the sky the moment they appear. But here's where things get even more surreal. Engineers have started putting shotguns on drones themselves. Yeah, flying machines armed with shotguns, hunting other drones mid-air. Some designs even use 6-barreled rotating shotguns, basically creating mini flying gunships built solely to destroy enemy drones. The terrifying part? Those same setups could easily be turned toward ground troops if someone really wanted to. It's hard to believe, but the modern battlefield is starting to look like something straight out of a sci-fi movie. Machines, fighting machines, humans trying to keep up, and old-school weapons getting futuristic upgrades. And through it all, the shotgun has survived it all, reinvented again and again. From muddy World War I trenches to today's drone-filled skies, it's still in the fight, just for a completely different reason than anyone a century ago could have imagined.